Number 1. Archaeopteryx. The year is 1861, Bavaria, Germany. 2 years after Charles Darwin published a book that was tearing the scientific world apart. You're a quarry worker in Solnhofen, cutting limestone for lithograph printing plates. The stone here is famous for one strange property. It splits into impossibly thin, smooth layers, almost like pages in a book. You strike the slab, it cracks open, and there, pressed into 150-million-year-old rock, is the impression of a wing. Not a bird's wing. Not quite. Here's where it gets strange. The creature has feathers, clearly, unmistakably feathers. But it also has a mouth full of sharp teeth, 3 clawed fingers extending from each wing, and a long, bony reptilian tail. The kind you'd expect on a lizard, not a bird. The fossil was named Archaeopteryx lithographica, ancient wing from the lithographic stone. It was studied by German paleontologist Hermann von Meyer and later acquired by the Natural History Museum in London for the staggering sum of 700 pounds, a fortune in 1862. Darwin's On the Origin of Species had been published in 1859. He had predicted that transitional fossils, creatures caught between one form and another, must exist somewhere in the fossil record. Critics said no such fossil had ever been found. 2 years later, one fell out of a German quarry. The timing was almost too perfect. But that wasn't the disturbing part. Since 1861, 12 specimens of Archaeopteryx have been discovered, all from the same small region of Bavaria, all from the same narrow slice of geological time. Nowhere else on Earth has produced one. Why only here? Why only this window of time, roughly 150.8 million years ago, based on radiometric dating of the surrounding volcanic ash layers? Scientists believe the Solnhofen Lagoon was a stagnant, oxygen-starved body of water, a natural trap where anything that fell in sank into fine mud and was sealed away almost instantly, undisturbed by scavengers or bacteria. A geological accident, repeated again and again, in one place for one small window in Earth's 4.5 billion-year history. And this is where everything changes. In 2011, a re-examination of specimen number 11 revealed something researchers had missed for 150 years. Faint traces of melanosomes, the microscopic structures that carry pigment. Scientists at Manchester University and Brown University concluded that Archaeopteryx wasn't just black and white. It may have been mostly black, with white patches on its wingtips. We don't just know that this creature existed. We know roughly what color it was 150 million years after it died. But here's the open loop nobody can close. Archaeopteryx's brain structure, mapped using CT scans in 2004 by Ohio University researcher Lawrence Whitmer, shows it likely had the balance and vision required for flight. So the question isn't whether it could fly. The question is why almost nothing like it exists anywhere else on the planet. One place, one narrow window, one creature holding the exact combination of features evolution was never supposed to leave evidence of. But Archaeopteryx wasn't the strangest feathered fossil ever found, not even close. The next one wouldn't just have feather impressions, it would still have its skin. Number 2. Sinosauropteryx. The year is 1996, Liaoning Province, China. A farmer is digging in a shale quarry in a region local geologists call the J-hole biota, an ancient ecosystem entombed by repeated volcanic ash falls over 120 million years ago. You're that farmer. You split a rock. And the outline staring back at you is impossible to ignore. A small, 2-legged dinosaur, no larger than a turkey. But surrounding its skeleton is something that has never been seen before. A fuzzy, bristled outline running down its spine, along its tail. It looks like fur. It looks like feathers. Nobody in the room is sure which. Here's where it gets strange. The fossil is smuggled through private fossil dealers before it reaches scientists. By the time paleontologist Ji Qiang at the Chinese Academy of Geological Sciences formally examines it in 1996, it's already being called the discovery of the decade. Sinosauropteryx becomes the first non-avian dinosaur ever found with direct fossil evidence of protofeathers. Simple, hollow filaments, not yet capable of flight, but unmistakably feather-like in structure.
It confirms what scientists had only theorized, that some dinosaurs were feathered long before birds existed.
The species lived during the early Cretaceous period, roughly 124 to 122 million years ago. It was a small, fast predator, likely feeding on lizards and early mammals, evidence found directly in its fossilized stomach contents. But the next discovery was even stranger. In 2010, a research team led by Dr. Jakob Winther at the University of Bristol used electron microscopes to examine the fossil's preserved melanosomes, the same pigment structures found in Archaeopteryx. They didn't just find pigment, they found a pattern. Sinosauropteryx had a striped reddish-brown and pale banded tail, like a raccoon's. For the first time in history, scientists weren't just describing a dinosaur's shape. They were describing its actual coloring, based on structures invisible to the naked eye, sealed inside rock for 120 million years. And this raises an unsettling question. If we can now determine the exact color pattern of a creature that died before humans, before primates, before most mammals even existed, what else is hiding in these fossils that we haven't found the technology to see yet? The stripes on Sinosauropteryx's tail suggest camouflage, countershading, a hunting strategy. But we'll never know if it worked. We'll never see it move. We only have the pattern, frozen, silent, waiting in the rock for 120 million years for someone to finally look close enough. But color wasn't the strangest thing preserved in the J-hole fossils. The next fossil on this list wasn't found in China. It was found in a mine in Canada. And it didn't just preserve color, it preserved almost the entire animal. Number 3. Borealopelta. The year is 2011, northern Alberta, Canada. You're operating heavy machinery at the Suncor Millennium Oil Sands mine, digging through ancient marine sediment. Your excavator blade strikes something hard. You stop the machine. You climb down. And what you find embedded in the rock isn't a typical fossil. It's a lump of stone, roughly the shape and size of a rhinoceros, with texture on its surface that looks disturbingly like skin. Here's where it gets strange. This isn't a skeleton. This is a body. The fossil is transported to the Royal Tyrrell Museum in Drumheller, Alberta, where preparator Mark Mitchell spends over 7,000 hours, nearly 6 years, painstakingly removing rock from the specimen, one grain at a time. What emerges is Borealopelta markmichelli, a nodosaur, an armored, plant-eating dinosaur, so well preserved that scientists can see the individual armor plates, called osteoderms, still in their original position on its back. Its skin, its stomach contents, even remnants of pigment. The fossil dates back 110 million years to the early Cretaceous period. But that wasn't the disturbing part. Scientists at the University of Saskatchewan, led by Caleb Brown, discovered that this creature's coloring followed a pattern called countershading, darker on top, lighter underneath, the same camouflage strategy used by many modern animals to blend into shifting light. That means this armored, tank-like dinosaur, despite weighing over 1,300 kilograms and wearing literal body armor, still needed to hide from something. From what? Nobody knows. No predator fossil from this exact ecosystem has been found large enough to threaten an adult Borealopelta. And yet its body evolved a hiding strategy anyway. And this is where everything changes. Researchers extracted material from the fossil's stomach, an almost unheard-of discovery for a dinosaur this size. The stomach contents, published in the journal Royal Society Open Science in 2020, revealed fern leaves, charcoal fragments, and gastroliths, swallowed stones used to help digest tough plant matter. This animal's last meal survived 110 million years. We know what it ate in the final hours of its life. We know it may have died shortly after eating, possibly swept out to sea by a flood, its body drifting for days before sinking, belly up, into marine sediment that sealed it away from oxygen and scavengers almost instantly. But we don't know what killed it. We don't know what it was hiding from. And the mummy, as researchers now call it, remains one of the only dinosaurs in the world where scientists can look at its actual face. Not a reconstruction, not a sculpture, its face. But a body preserved on land is rare. a body preserved with its unborn young still inside. That's almost unheard of. The next fossil on this list crosses that line. Number 4. The Ichthyosaur with embryos. The year is 1990, Holzmaden, Germany, a region already infamous among paleontologists for its black shale quarries formed at the bottom of an ancient, oxygen-poor sea roughly 182 million years ago. You're a fossil collector, carefully splitting slabs of dark shale, searching for the marine reptiles this site is known for. Ichthyosaurs, dolphin-shaped predators that ruled the Jurassic seas. You find one, a female, fully intact, but something is wrong with her abdomen. Here's where it gets strange. Inside her body, preserved in the same slab of rock, are smaller skeletons, curled, delicate, unmistakably unborn. This is not the first Ichthyosaur embryo fossil ever found, but it becomes one of the most studied. Ichthyosaurs, unlike most reptiles, gave live birth rather than laying eggs, a fact confirmed by fossils like this one, first documented in the scientific literature as early as the 1840s and expanded through 20th and 21st century discoveries across German and later Chinese fossil beds. A specimen studied by researchers at the University of Bonn revealed something remarkable. One embryo positioned as if it were emerging tail first, exactly how modern dolphins are born. An animal that evolved from land-dwelling ancestors that returned to the ocean roughly 250 million years ago had independently evolved the exact same birthing method used by whales and dolphins today. Mammals it isn't even related to. But that wasn't the disturbing part. In several specimens, researchers found evidence the mother died during the birthing process itself. The embryo positioned halfway out of the birth canal, fossilized in the exact moment of death. Why did she die? Some paleontologists suggest a difficult birth. Others suggest a sudden, violent event. A landslide of sediment, a drop in oxygen, a predator attack interrupted mid-labor. The rock doesn't say. It only shows the moment, frozen, unfinished. And here's where it gets stranger still. In 2018, a specimen nicknamed the fish lizard Ichthyosaur, unearthed in Chile's Torres del Paine region by a team from the University of Manchester, was found containing a fetus and evidence in its stomach that it may have died shortly after, or during, the birthing process, at extreme depth far from shore. That means these creatures may have given birth far out at sea, not near coastlines like many marine mammals do today. We know how ichthyosaurs were born. We don't know why, in case after case, across millions of years and thousands of kilometers, so many of them appear to have died in the act of bringing new life into the world. But live birth wasn't the strangest reproductive mystery preserved in the fossil record. The next discovery didn't preserve a birth, it preserved something no one thought could survive at all. Soft tissue, wrapped in fossilized tree sap. Number 5. The dinosaur tail in amber. The year is 2015. Myanmar, in a region long known to local miners simply as Amber Country, where resin from ancient conifer forests has fossilized into hardened, honey-colored stone for nearly 99 million years. You're a paleontologist named Lida Xing from the China University of Geosciences walking through an amber market in Myitkyina, browsing stalls where sellers offer polished amber pieces, often containing trapped insects, to tourists and jewelry buyers. One piece catches your eye. Here's where it gets strange. Suspended inside the amber isn't an insect, it's something covered in what looks unmistakably like feathers. Reddish-brown on top, pale underneath. A local seller had already begun shaping it into jewelry, planning to sell it as plant material. Under CT scanning and microscopic analysis, Xing's team confirmed the specimen wasn't a plant, and it wasn't a bird. It was the tail of a small, feathered, non-avian dinosaur, roughly the size of a sparrow, preserved in 3 dimensions, down to the individual barbs of each feather, and even traces of original color and iron residue believed to be fossilized blood. The findings were published in the journal Current Biology in 2016, and the specimen, nicknamed Eve, remains the only known 3D preserved dinosaur soft tissue of its kind. Every other feathered dinosaur fossil on Earth is a flattened impression in rock. This one still has depth, structure, texture you can see individual strands of. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The amber trade in Myanmar operates in a region plagued by armed conflict, and much of the amber comes from mines in Kachin State, an area with a long history of instability. Scientists have voiced growing concern that valuable specimens like this one are being sold into private collections, or destroyed by miners who don't recognize what they've found, before researchers ever see them. How many other feathered dinosaurs have already been ground into jewelry? Nobody knows. And nobody can know. Because unlike stone fossils, amber pieces are mined, sold, and dispersed through informal markets, with no official excavation record, no research team present, no way to trace exactly where, or when, most of them were found. This tale survived 99 million years sealed in solidified tree resin, only to almost become a bracelet. And this is where everything changes. If a dinosaur's tail can survive fully intact, feathers, tissue, and blood residue, inside amber, the obvious question becomes, what else is out there? Whole bodies, skulls, organs? Somewhere in private collections, in unlabeled amber pieces sold as curiosities, there may already be specimens more complete than anything science has ever studied. We just don't know where they are. But amber wasn't the only place scientists found something that shouldn't have survived. The next fossil on this list isn't famous for what it preserved, it's famous for what it proves. A moment 375 million years old that rewrote the story of every animal that has ever walked on land, including us. Number 6. Tiktaalik. The year is 2004, Ellesmere Island in the Canadian Arctic, one of the most remote, hostile environments on Earth, where temperatures regularly drop below freezing even in summer. You're part of a research team led by Dr. Neil Shubin from the University of Chicago. You've been coming to this island for 6 years, searching a very specific layer of rock. Sediment dated to roughly 375 million years ago, from the late Devonian period, back when this frozen island sat near the equator, covered in shallow tropical rivers. You're looking for something that, according to the fossil record, should not exist. A transitional species between fish and the first land animals. You find a rock face, you start digging. Here's where it gets strange. Embedded in the stone is a flattened skull, clearly fish-like, with scales and gills, but the front fins attached to it are wrong. Inside each fin are bones. Distinct bones, a shoulder, an elbow, a wrist. Tiktaalik rosei, named using an Inuktitut word meaning large freshwater fish, becomes one of the most significant transitional fossils ever discovered. It has fish characteristics, scales, gills, fins, but it also has protolimb characteristics, a flexible neck, a flattened skull like a crocodile, and load-bearing wrist bones capable of supporting weight. Features found in no fish that came before it, and every four-limbed land animal that came after. The discovery, published in Nature in 2006, is hailed as direct physical evidence of the transition from sea to land, a missing piece Darwin's critics had demanded for over a century. Every land vertebrate on Earth, every reptile, every bird, every mammal, every human, descends in some evolutionary sense from creatures built on the same skeletal blueprint first seen clearly in Tiktaalik. But here's where it gets stranger. Shubin's team didn't stumble onto this fossil by accident. They specifically targeted this location, this rock layer, this exact geological age, based on a prediction. Using the fossil record to calculate almost exactly where and when a fish-to-land transition should have occurred. They searched for 6 years, in one of the most remote places on the planet, based purely on a theoretical prediction, and they found exactly what the theory said should be there. This is where everything changes. In 2010, further study of Tiktaalik's fin bones revealed it likely used its front fins to prop itself up and perform something close to a push-up motion, possibly to breathe air at the surface, or to move short distances between shrinking pools of water during seasonal droughts. It wasn't fully a land animal, it wasn't fully a fish, it was something caught, permanently, in the act of becoming. But this raises an uncomfortable question. If scientists could predict exactly where to find a 375 million-year-old transitional fossil, what other predicted fossils are still out there, waiting in rock layers nobody has looked at yet. We don't know. But Tiktaalik wasn't preserved by amber or mud or volcanic ash. It was preserved by an ancient riverbed, the same kind of environment that, tens of millions of years later, would preserve something far more chilling. Not a transition, a family, frozen together. Number 7. Homotherium. The year is 2020, the Siberian Arctic along the banks of the Badyarika River. Permafrost, ground that has remained frozen for tens of thousands of years, is thawing at an accelerating rate. You're a local resident walking the riverbank when you notice something exposed in the melting mud. Fur. Here's where it gets strange. You're looking at what appears to be a small cat, but the proportions are wrong. The legs are too long, the face is oddly shaped. The specimen is transported to the Academy of Sciences of the Republic of Sakha, where researchers identify it as the frozen remains of a Homotherium cub, an extinct genus of saber-toothed cat commonly called the scimitar cat, believed to have gone extinct roughly 10,000 years ago. Radiocarbon dating places the cub at approximately 35,500 years old. It is the first mummified Homotherium specimen ever discovered anywhere in the world, and the level of preservation is almost unheard of. Its fur, whiskers, paw pads, and even the soft tissue of its face remain intact. Published in the journal Scientific Reports in 2020, the study, led by Dr. Alexei Lopatin, reveals that unlike modern lion cubs, this Homotherium cub had a wide, powerful neck, unusually long front limbs relative to its back limbs, and dark, thick fur, evolutionary adaptations that suggest a very different hunting strategy from any cat alive today. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The cub was found alone. No mother, no den, no evidence of what killed it. Permafrost preservation requires extremely rapid freezing, the kind of sudden environmental shift that doesn't leave time for a scavenger or a predator or even the animal itself to understand what's happening before it's over. What could freeze a living animal that fast? Scientists have proposed sudden ground collapse, drowning in freezing water, or burial in a rapid snow event. But no definitive cause of death has ever been established. And this is where everything changes. Homotherium fossils have been found on almost every continent, from North America to Europe to Asia, spanning millions of years of the fossil record. But mummified soft tissue like this had never been found before, anywhere, from any location, from any time period. Out of countless Homotherium remains discovered across the planet over the past 2 centuries, exactly one preserved its face. One. In the exact spot where a river was cutting through permafrost, in the exact year researchers happened to be documenting the region, at the exact moment climate change was accelerating the thaw. The odds of finding this cub intact in a window measured in decades out of tens of thousands of years are difficult to calculate. But climate change is uncovering fossils faster than scientists can study them. Every year, permafrost across Siberia melts further, and every year, more of these frozen windows into the Ice Age are exposed and lost before anyone reaches them. How many Homotherium cubs, or mammoths, or other Ice Age creatures have already thawed, decomposed, and vanished without a single researcher ever seeing them? We'll never know. But permafrost preserves through cold. The final fossil on this list was preserved a completely different way, one so unusual and so recently discovered that scientists are still debating exactly what they're looking at. Number 8. Austronaga minuta. The year is recent. Within the last several years, Southeast Asia, a research team is examining a small, unusual specimen recovered from ancient sedimentary rock, unlike anything cataloged before in the region's fossil record. Here's where it gets strange. The specimen is small, fragmentary, and it doesn't cleanly match any previously known genus. Austronaga minuta is among the more recently identified and less publicly documented fossil finds on this list. A discovery still working its way through the layers of scientific verification, peer review, and classification that every new species must pass through before it's accepted into the official fossil record. Unlike Archaeopteryx or Tiktaalik, fossils examined and re-examined by hundreds of researchers over more than a century, a new or rare species like this exists for a period of time in a strange kind of scientific limbo, documented, studied, but not yet fully understood. That's the unsettling truth about paleontology that documentaries rarely mention. For every famous fossil, the ones with museum wings built around them, the ones photographed for magazine covers, there are thousands of specimens sitting in drawers, in universities, in private collections, only partially studied, waiting years or decades for someone with the right expertise, the right funding, and the right time to finally determine exactly what they are. Here's where it gets stranger. Every fossil on this list, Archaeopteryx, Sinosauropteryx, Borealopelta, the Ichthyosaur, the ambertail, Tiktaalik, the Homotherium cub, was once exactly like this. Unclassified, unconfirmed, sitting in a lab or a quarry or a market stall before anyone understood what they'd found. Somewhere in the world right now, there is a fossil sitting in a drawer, already discovered, already sitting in a research collection, that will one day be recognized as one of the most important finds in the history of paleontology. Nobody knows which one it is yet. That fossil might already be sitting in a museum basement. It might already have a specimen number. It might be waiting right now for someone to finally look closely enough.